Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the Rebel Pastor YouTube channel. Pastor Sky over here, and I am not in South Korea. And as you can see from the loudness of this cafe, I am in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Yes, I've traveled all the way here to the deep south in the United States. I've been in the U.S. for about 3 weeks now, and I've just been enjoying my time here. I was actually just recording outside, but I realized, I didn't realize, I was outside recording and it's 0 degrees, right? So it's freezing outside. I tried to record, but I would have to say it was almost impossible because it's just too cold. Like, I'm holding the camera and my hands are just freezing. But yeah, I've been here on tour for about 3 weeks now. I started off in LA, and then I went to Houston, Texas. Then I went to Athens, Georgia. And then I'm now here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And then tomorrow I will be heading to Washington, D.C. So it is a trip. I am visiting a lot of churches. I am doing some speaking and lecturing and stuff like that too. But you know what? I actually should put some of my my lectures or the speaking engagements I do have. I'm not sure if I'll put it on yet now or not, because it's going to have a lot of people in the video from those churches, and then you have to get all the permission and stuff like that too. But guys, welcome. It's already 2025, and this is probably the first real podcast of 2025. Hope you guys have really enjoyed your New Year's, had a great Christmas. I am here enjoying a really nice coffee. This cafe, it's called Monarch Espresso Bar. And I really like the coffee. I had a pour over, and I'm thinking about getting another. I'm possibly going to get another. I'm going to get a latte probably a little bit later, but very much enjoy the coffee here. So yeah, guys, if you like this type of content, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and also you can comment and share this video to other people that may enjoy this type of content too. So it's been an amazing 3 weeks visiting here in the U.S. Like I said, I'm going to D.C. after this, and then New York after that, and then probably head back to L.A., maybe Vegas, maybe San Francisco. Like Hawaii would be awesome too, right? But we'll just see how this ends up turning, like how this tour turns up. And next week you'll see where I am, if I'm still in the States or if I'm back in South Korea and stuff like that too. But yeah, it's I didn't think it was going to be this cold, but here in Alabama it's 0 degrees, and it is quite cold. I do believe DC is going to be cold. There's a huge storm that hit like Ohio, Virginia, somewhere else too. Ohio, Virginia, maybe DC, but I know there's and Illinois and such, and it hit really hard, like storm, like the planes couldn't land anymore. So I'm just thankful and grateful that all my friends that I met in Athens, that they got safely to their destination. Now, this week I want to talk about something very interesting, and as you can see from the title, it's about the restoration of woman. Right? Woman in the history of God, right? So, it's a very interesting topic, and I know that especially in some countries, especially like the U.S. and Canada, gender equality is such a huge thing, right? But, I want to go through the history of it, of how it actually came to be, and where the restoration of woman actually came about. Of course, a lot of people, this is not going to be like, one of these gender equality, but this is according to the scripture. Okay, so if you guys listen in, I hope that you guys will understand it, understand this concept or this today's content really well. All right, so let's start off with how things came about and how women got into a certain position. And of course, we need to go all the way back to Adam and Eve. Okay, so everyone knows the story of Adam and Eve, and it's about the fall of mankind. And of course, we know that both Adam and Eve ate the fruit. Okay, now here's where it gets very interesting. When it comes down to God punishing Adam and Eve, it's very interesting, because even with both Adam and Eve, because of their sin of eating the fruit, both of them were punished. However, Eve was punished more than Adam, right? So if you look at Genesis chapter 3:16, right? In Genesis chapter 3:16, what does it say? It says, "To the woman he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children." And then it says, "Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you." Right? So here we have this more severe punishment that Eve gets than man, and in this punishment, Eve is ruled by her husband, right? So when you look at this, it's like, why did Eve get a more severe punishment, right? And it eventually led to women being treated in a certain way in the Old Testament time. So here's the question is, why did Eve get punished more? And the answer we're going to get this from is in Luke chapter 17, verses 1 through 3. And what Jesus said to his disciples is, things that cause people to stumble are bound to come, but woe to anyone through whom they come, right? It's better for them to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck than to cause one of these little ones to stumble, so watch yourselves, right? So why is Eve's sin worse than Adam's? It's because not only did she sin first, but she tempted and caused Adam to sin too, which is worse than just sinning on your own, right? So it was a greater sin. So this is why Eve's sin was much greater than Adam's, and she had a bigger punishment. And it caused a chain reaction for all women to be treated in a certain way, especially in the Old Testament time. So the next question is, why would all women get punished for what only Eve did, right? And the thing you have to understand is biblically, and how God, the principle that God has installed in the Bible is a concept that in the Bible, a group of people can suffer because of a single person. And you might think that, that's not fair, but if you think about it, it also counts for the flip side, which means that because of one person, many people can be blessed. Right? So the concept is not just about suffering, it's about suffering and blessing, or in other words, one person can affect others. And I think this is something that we all agree with when it comes to living in this world, that because of your parents, if they're rich, you're benefiting from it, you've done nothing to deserve it, right? So in the same way too, if you look at the greatest example of one person affecting many people, is Jesus Christ. He died for everyone's sin. Right? So that one person can cause great blessings upon everyone in the entire world. Another similar example would be Ezekiel. Now, Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 4 and 5, and if you can read even longer to like 6 and 7, but it shows that Ezekiel suffered and paid the price for all of Israel. Right? It says that in verse 4, lie on your left side and put the sin of the people of Israel upon yourself. You are to bear their sin for the number of days you lie on your side. I have assigned you the same number of days as the years of their sin. So here is Israel, northern Israel, right? They sinned for 390 years, and Ezekiel paid the price of their sins by lying on his left side for 390 days. So the one person suffered to pay the sins of the people, right? So you see that in the Bible, it's true. One person can have effect on many people, just as Eve had an effect on all women, because she represented all women, because she was the first woman of faith, right? So whether it's good or bad, one person has an effect. So take a look at it, say for instance, like the national sports team. Okay, so a national sports team, they take the best of the best, and they're the ones that represent their entire country, and it affects the entire nation, whether it's the World Cup or the Olympics or something else, right? A president can change the destiny of a country, right? And it all comes down to the importance of the person, because a beggar on the street is not going to have a huge impact on the country when the president's going to have a huge impact on the country, right? So Adam and Eve were the first representatives of the people, the men and women of faith, and that's why Eve had such an impact. All right, so let's move to, how does it come to the restoration of women, right? What does it mean that women were restored, okay? So firstly, we need to know is, what does it look like for a woman to be restored? Like, what is the rightful place, right? And that brings us back to Genesis 3:16. Remember, we already read this, that Adam and Eve committed the fall, right? Adam and Eve committed the fall, and the punishment was interesting because the punishment said that the man will rule over the woman, right? And that the woman being ruled over by man is a punishment, okay? So if woman is put below man, but if there's a restoration, what does it mean? It means that she goes to her rightful spot being next to man. right? It doesn't mean, like, and guys, we're not going to get into arguments about, oh, like, what does it mean equal? Are they the same? No, they're going to have different roles, but their respect and such is going to be equal, right? They're going to be equal in terms, not in terms of what they can do, right? Because there's things that women can do that men can't, and things that men can do that women can't, right? But they're going to be equal in respect, in love, right? They're going to be side by side, right? And this insinuates, just the fact that there is a punishment that women fall below men, it insinuates that the original position was not meant to be like that, right? Like being dominated and ruled, right? So they were side by side with men. And, like I said, guys, this is not about the argument of, what does that mean? What about gender equality? We're not getting into that. We're talking strictly biblically speaking. And we're going to get into a little bit deeper of what that actually means, right? So when you look at Ephesians chapter 5, it does talk about how men and women should treat each other. And I love verse 21 because it talks, this is the thing that we have to really recognize when it comes, biblically speaking, a marriage between a man and a woman. For a husband and wife, in Ephesians 5:21, it says what? It says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ, right? Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another. It's not women only submitting to men. It is not men submitting to women. It is the relationship we submit to each other in this relationship, right? And of course, many people are going to say that, it says women must submit to men, submit to men, submit to men, and men are ruling or dominating. But you have to also understand it's both sides. We submit to each other. And verse 28, 29, it talks about how a husband should treat his wife. In verse 28 and 29 says, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body just as Christ does the church, right? Just as he loves himself. That's how much he's loving his wife, like his own, right? So we see that the instruction for husbands and wives in a Christian household, there's a way it's supposed to be done, where husband and wife submit to each other and submit and understand our role in the marriage, right? So when does this restoration begin? And the answer is, it's already began. It happened 2,000 years ago when Jesus Christ came. Why? Because only the one, think about this, if it's because of sin that Eve falls below man, then we need the person who can forgive sins to restore women to their original position, which is Jesus Christ. So when the Messiah comes, the one that forgives sins comes, what did he do? He comes to restore, he comes to forgive sins, and he comes to bring salvation, right? So history has to have a resetting. And one of the best examples you can see is Jesus' interaction with women throughout the Bible. And one of the big ones we have is John chapter 4 talks about the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman, right? So Jesus meets a Samaritan woman by the well. And it's very, very interesting because in verse 9, right? In verse 9, what happens? The woman is kind of shocked because she's like, how can you talk to me? Not only am I Samaritan who's looked down upon by the Jews, but I'm a woman. So she was shocked that Jesus was even talking to him. But Jesus shares the gospel with her, which is a great thing. And think about this. Anyone today, do you think that anyone would look down if a man tried to evangelize or share the gospel with a woman? Do you think people would look down on that man? And the answer is absolutely not. But back then, 2,000 years ago, it was looked down upon. Not only was she Samaritan, but she was also a woman. Today, if I were to go in and share the gospel with a woman and then she accepts Christ, we wouldn't say, how dare you talk to a woman? We would be like, no, we're happy, and we would give glory to God and thanksgiving, right? But it's interesting because back in John chapter 4, look at verse 27 and look at the reaction of the disciples. It says, just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman, but no one asked, what do you want, or why are you talking with her? They were surprised. They were shocked because in that time, it was not a common thing, and it was considered deeply inappropriate not only for Jesus to talk to a Samaritan, but even to a woman, right? So Jesus was showing God's love and compassion to all, no matter who they were, man or woman. And it was an example of the restoration of the kingdom of heaven and bringing women back into their rightful place, right? And it's kind of just like we see today. Today, think about it. After Jesus he set the standard and he showed us how to truly live. Is there any issue with men and women worshiping together? No. Is there any issues with men and women talking and discussing the scriptures? No. Is there any issues with men evangelizing women? No. Or even women evangelizing men? It is not looked down upon. There isn't. The spiritual condition was changed at the time of Jesus as salvation was brought to all people, and Jesus did not look at people according to their physical bodies, their gender, or their race. He was looking at their spirits, and he's looking at how to give and bring salvation to all. And that's why the restoration of women was already beginning at the time of Jesus 2,000 years ago, and this is why we're in such a different position today. All right? So, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Yes, sorry for being a little bit loud out here because I am in a cafe. I wanted to go outside. It's freezing, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, all right? Everyone have an amazing and awesome day, and we'll see you guys next week on the Rebel Pastor YouTube channel. This is Pastor Sky signing out. Bye-bye.